G'day guys, welcome back to another video. My name is Justin. In today's upload, I'm going to be doing a tier ranking video of all the reef fish that I've kept over the last 10 years during my reef keeping journey. I'd just like to start off by saying this is all in my opinion and all in my experiences. If you've had a great experience with a particular fish that I haven't, hats off to you. But as I said, it's just my experience. And obviously each individual fish has its own personality, so you may potentially have a different experience. But these are the experiences that I have had with these fish during my fish keeping journey, and I just thought I'd do a little video on it, just giving my sort of thoughts on the journey so far in regards to all the fish I've kept. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, so we've got 5 categories. We've got the favorites, the easy, potential, avoid, and never again. Favorites is obviously fish that I've had really great experiences with. They're really easy to keep, and if I don't own them, I would be looking to keep them again in the future. Easy is fish that, they aren't my favorite fish, but if, you were looking to keep them, they would be really easy in terms of care and getting them to eat. Potential is fish that I may keep in the future, but I've, probably had prior experiences with them that weren't so great, but if they do pop up and the conditions are right, I would keep them again. Avoid is fish that I've probably had some pretty not so great experiences with that I would be looking to avoid. And never again is obviously I've had a really bad experience with that fish, and they will never be going in a reef tank that I will be keeping. So the first fish that we have is an azure damsel, a beautifully two-tone colored damsel that you can obviously see from a distance with its striking blue and yellow underbelly. I've kept this fish on multiple different occasions, and look, I'm happy to say that I haven't had any issues with it. I've kept it with other damsels and with other fish, and I know damsels get a pretty heavy rap for being aggressive, but this particular one has been really good to me. So I'm going to put it in easy. I wouldn't say, even though I'm keeping it at the moment, it's not one of my favorite sort of fish, but definitely one that I would recommend as a beginner sort of fish. The next fish we have is a yellow banana wrasse, a really easy to keep wrasse that I have kept on, I think, one occasion, I believe, and I had it for quite a while, and I was moving it in between a lot of different displays, and it had no issues at all. So I'll keep the yellow banana wrasse in easy as well. It also did really well in terms of eating a different variety of foods, and it never seemed to really pick on any other fish or any other wrasse or corals. So a really nice fish that I would highly recommend if you've got the tank space for it. The next fish we have is a Blanc cardinal fish, a fish that I'm actually keeping currently in my display that I think is pretty iconic in the hobby. I think most people that have been in the hobby for a little bit have kept this fish on at least one occasion. Look, in my opinion, I'm going to have to put this in the favorites. It's a fish that I think is just so unique in the way it looks and moves around the tank that I think it looks great in any reef tank. And once they get a bit of size on them as well, they still retain that metallic sort of iridescent color that they have, which gives it a really striking look. So goes into the favorite list for me, the Blanc cardinal. The next fish we have is a standard bannerfish. This fish is, I believe, seen in almost every sort of tropical reef around the world. Is quite common in the aquarium trade, obviously because of that. And I have kept this fish on one occasion, and unfortunately it didn't do very well. I can't say that it was the individual fish or it was my tank, but I don't believe it lasted that long. But as far as butterfly fish goes, this fish is recommended for its ability to adapt quite well to aquarium life compared to other butterfly fish. So I'm going to keep it in the potential, because if it came up again and I had the correct tank size, I would potentially keep it again. The next fish we have is probably a fan favorite among a lot of reef keepers, and it is the bicolor blenny, another type of blenny that is found in most reefs throughout the world. Another, in my opinion, really awesome fish, and a fish that you can sort of interact with, and it'll really greet you at the tank and sort of get to know you. So, let alone the beautiful two-tone color that it has. So, the bicolored blenny is a favorite of mine, and I think a reef tank staple if you're just getting into the hobby. The next fish is a dottyback, and it is called the royal dottyback, I believe. Very closely related to the royal grammer. In fact, they're pretty much the same color, same shape, same look, but I believe they come from different oceans. This fish I would highly recommend is avoided by the hobbyist. I have kept this fish on one occasion, and it is extremely aggressive. I would recommend keeping it as an individual. I think if kept in I guess not too small of a tank, but like a 30 liter or a 10 gallon as an individual with different types of corals, I think they actually look quite nice. But it is an incredibly territorial and aggressive fish, and I would obviously recommend that beginners stay away from this fish, and most people stay away from this fish because it can be quite aggressive. I'm going to put this in the avoid category, and just an FYI with this fish, they do actually lose a bit of their color with age compared to the royal grammer, which actually retains a lot of its color with age and is the more peaceful variant. So if you like that fish's color, check out the royal grammer. The next fish I have is a blue-green chromis, or a standard blue chromis fish. I've kept this fish on one occasion, I believe, and I'm pretty sure it's the longest fish that I've ever kept in my reef keeping career. I think I had one for about 2.5 years before I moved it on, so it never died, but I kept it through multiple different tanks, and it just kept going along. I had it as an initial cycle sort of fish, just to get the the nitrogen cycle going, and it did perfectly well. I kept it as a solo fish, so without having a school of chromis, and it did really well. And a lot of people, I guess, look past this fish because it just looks like a regular sort of fish. It sort of has that goldfish shape, but under the correct lights, these fish actually look really great. And once they get a bit of size on them, they really do stand out. So the chromis is one of my favorite reef fish, to be honest, and just for that reason of just being really easy to keep, and while also still looking pretty good. The next fish is a blue tang, or a blue surgeon fish. Obviously, probably I would say one of the most popular reef keeping fish in the hobby, probably due to the movie Finding Nemo and Finding Dory, but definitely the most popular tang in the hobby. And it's there's obviously lots of controversy around keeping blue tangs with how big they get, and people keep them in small tanks. I've kept 3 individuals, and out of the 3, I think I had one for about not far off a year before I lost it during a tank change, unfortunately, and the other 2 I lost to ick. So I think in the right conditions, they can actually do very well, and they can be hardy, but I would recommend beginners stay away from it. So look, I'm going to keep it in the potential, as in I would potentially keep it again, but they can be a little bit temperamental, and they do have a tendency to sort of sulk in the corner of a tank. I remember one of the first blue tangs I had, it actually had quite a bit of size on it. Whenever I would use the aquarium scraper, the algae cleaner, it would literally go and hide it in the corner of the tank, and it would just lay on the bottom on its side and have a right sulk. The next fish is a wrasse, and it looks like we got a couple coming up. Sorry about some of the pictures with the faces cut off, just the way this program works. But it's a bluehead fairy wrasse, a wrasse that I've kept on one occasion before, and I can say it is a really, really nice and really easy fish to keep, and has striking colors, and it was just a really easy fish to keep overall. I had no issues with it with any of my other fish, or any of the wrasse. I think I had a couple of wrasse together, and it was one of the ones that actually didn't bother any of the other fish. So I would keep it in the easy range. So one that I would recommend. I know in the States and Europe and stuff, I believe fairy wrasse have a pretty hefty price tag compared to here in Australia, because we collect a lot. locally, and obviously we get them from Indonesia where they're quite plentiful. But yeah, highly recommended if you can get your hands on one, if you're looking to have a couple of wrasse. The next fish we have is a whipfin fairy wrasse. Again, the face is cut off. I apologize for that, but a really striking wrasse in terms of the color, and when it really flares up and it opens up its fins, it's a beautiful wrasse. I've kept this one on 2 occasions, and unfortunately, compared to other wrasse, they seem like heavy jumpers, and I did lose the first one due to it flying out the tank, and which was not a nice experience. I think it was one of the first fish I lost due to it going carpet surfing. So if you are keeping this particular wrasse, I would highly recommend a net cover or a piece of glass to go over the tank, because I will almost guarantee you will lose this wrasse to it jumping. And for that, I will put it in potentially to keep again. I haven't seen it pop up that often in any of my reef stores in the last couple of years, so I don't know if they're not being collected as often or they're becoming rare. But if you have the right setup in terms of tank mates and I guess a hood over the tank or a net cover, it is a really great wrasse. But yeah, just keep in mind that I don't think they do very well with any other aggressive or boisterous fish. The next fish we have is a Clarky clownfish, so it's the first clownfish in this list. If you guys watch my videos, you would have seen in one of my old videos from a couple of years ago, I think in 2020, when I got my Red Sea Reefer, one of the first fish I got was a Clarky clownfish pair. Really nice fish, guys. I can't really say anything too bad about it. I think they may get potentially a little bit aggressive when they get to adult sort of size, because they can get quite big. But they're really nice fish, and if you're looking at clownfish and you want some decent sized clownfish, I would highly recommend them. For that, they go in potential. So the next fish is a convict tang. I know this tang is sort of heavily debated. People, I think, for the most part, have pretty bad experiences with this fish in terms of survival rate, and then the ones that do get to I guess surviving in a reef tank actually turn out to be really beautiful fish once they start eating and stuff. But guys, all the convict tangs I've seen in my local fish shops look absolutely awful in terms of health, unfortunately. And it's a shame because it's such a nice looking fish, but for me, it's a fish that I will be avoiding in the future. I've kept one before, and it didn't last very long. It didn't eat. I tried to QT it. The thing just never ate. I fast-tracked the QT. I put it into a massive display. Well, not a massive, but a 4-foot display, and unfortunately it still never ate. So I will be avoiding this fish in the future. And I recommend, for the most part, unless you guys are prepared to I guess lose the fish on a 90% chance, you avoid it as well. The next fish we have is, I guess, another heavily debated fish on whether they should be collected at all in the reef hobby, and it is the copper band butterfly fish. Another really popular fish, or I guess made popular by the movie Finding Nemo. Look, I think most people that are in the reef hobby know the situation around this fish. I would personally never keep one again. I had it once. I had it for about a week. It didn't die, so I just I couldn't get it to eat, and I felt really bad. And I was in one of the fish groups, and someone decided to take it off my hands. I think they had a 6-foot display, so I ended up selling it to another hobbyist. But it's a very tricky fish to get eating, and then you will get some people in there and say, oh, mine are eating fine, and it just takes effort. And look, it takes a lot of effort, and if you guys can't put that effort in every day, and let's be honest, most people won't, there's no point keeping the fish. And I'm seeing this fish less and less in my local fish shop, so in my eyes it's a positive thing. I think this fish is best kept in the ocean. The next fish on the list, which is a tang, actually is the first tang that I kept during my sort of fish keeping career, and it is a Disomiri tang. A lot of viewers may not be familiar with this tang because I don't believe it is exported very often due to the sheer size that it gets to. It is a locally found tang here in Australia, and I got it when I had a 4-foot tank, and I think the guy pulled a quick one on me. The dude that sold it to me, he never told me how big it got, and it was just like, yeah, like that'll be all right, like go for that one. So I got the tang, got it into the fish, into the tank, and you know what? It was doing fine. It was eating, and it was doing really well. And then I was like, oh, let me actually do some research. This was almost 10 years ago, by the way. I would never do this again, but I would never do the research after getting the fish, but did some research, found out the tang grows to like 2.5 feet, and I was just like, okay, I don't need a fish that big. So I took it back to the shop shortly after that. For me, I would avoid this fish unless you've got a 6 to 8 foot plus 300 gallon tank. They just grow to absolute monsters. The next fish on the list is an engineer goby. Pretty cool fish, to be honest, and one that I had wanted to keep for ages before I actually got it. There was only one fish shop, one local fish shop that was getting them in on a constant basis compared to all the other ones. And then for about a year or two, they didn't get it. They couldn't get one in, and no other shops were getting them in. So once they finally started popping up again, I think post-COVID, it was around 2022, I ended up snagging a couple of them from my local fish shop, and I think I bought about three of them. I'm not sure what ended up happening to most of them, but one of them survived and actually packed on so much size, and was just such an awesome fish. The way they swim, and how they sort of transform from their juvenile to their adult phase, it almost looks like a completely different fish. One thing to bear in mind with this fish though, it will plow through your sand. So if you are keeping it with corals and stuff, and corals that are on your sand bed, they will likely get covered if you are keeping an adult size fish. So in a species sort of only tank, or in a fish only tank, I think this is an awesome fish, and probably one that's overlooked a little bit, and is a really great alternative to eels as well. But another fish that I wouldn't recommend keeping a net cover over. I would keep this fish in easy. All right, guys, the next fish on the list is a pixie hawkfish, or standard hawkfish. I think they have different names in different countries. Look, probably one of the most aggressive fish that I've ever kept, up there with the bicolor dottyback. It is a very, very angry fish, and one that I do not recommend. Whenever I see it in a fish shop, I'm just like, I genuinely feel sorry for whoever buys that fish. They're very hardy, but with that hardiness comes great aggression, and any fish that is added to the tank after the hawkfish will ensue a torrid time unless the tank is very large. So I'm going to put it in the never again category, as I had a pretty bad experience with it. Once I had one, any fish that I added after it just went nuts, and I had to return it to the fish shop. The next fish is its pretty much direct relative, but a nicer version of it. It is a flame hawkfish. It looks better, it has better attitude, it's good with other fish, it's good with corals, it won't eat your invertebrates like its pixie hawk friend over here will. And yeah, it's a really nice fish, really sort of intuitive fish. It'll come up to you and sort of look around with its eyes. A pretty funny fish. I think if you guys have kept this one before, you can definitely agree it's a pretty interesting fish. I would keep it in the easy pile. If you guys are thinking of getting one, I would highly recommend it. They're a very nice fish. I think just be careful with it around like your sort of ornamental shrimp, like your sexy shrimp or your harlequin shrimp. They could potentially become a snack. Around your cleaners and stuff, I think if the flame hawk is small, it should be okay. But obviously with reef fish, you never know. The next fish we have is a one spot foxface. I've kept one before and one only. I had a really great experience with it. I know some people have had some pretty, I guess, interesting experiences with them potentially eating corals. Some people don't know whether they're eating the corals or the algae or what. The one I had was a model citizen and an absolute algae eating machine. and I had it from a really small baby, and it actually grew pretty big. Nothing ever happened to it in terms of dying or anything. I just the tank that it was in, I shut it down and moved on. Him and some other fish, but a really nice fish, and they're quite funny when they're stressed. They go a complete different color, so it's really easy to tell how they're feeling. But one fish that I definitely recommend, and there's multiple different types of Foxfaces, magnificent Foxface and bicolor Foxfaces. So I've only kept the one spot, so I've had a good experiences with it, but if you are thinking about one, I would recommend it. The next fish on the list is a gold striped maroon clownfish. If you guys are familiar with my videos, you would have seen I had a really nice pair for quite a while until I moved them on. The females get absolutely huge, and the males stay pretty comically small. So it's a sort of funny combo. And if you've got a nice anemone, they actually are a very striking sort of look that it can give to a display. I've kept a lot of different clownfish, and the gold stripes versus the maroons are less aggressive in my experience. I kept the gold stripes with other fish, and I added other fish after it, and they were all good. So if you are looking at your larger sort of clowns, the ones that are bigger than your Clarkies, I would probably look at a gold stripe, and just that gold band they get is honestly really nice. So I'm going to put it in the easy. The next fish we have on the list is another favorite fish of most hobbyists. It is the mandarin dragonet, the red mandarin. I'm pretty sure, if you're in the hobby for at least 2 years plus, I think you would have tried this fish at some point. I was lucky enough to get one that was already eating frozen food from a reefer that was shutting their tank down, and I had it for about 7 months. And it was eating fine, but I had velvet wipe out all the fish in my tank, and unfortunately took out the mandarin as well. But if you can get one, that's eating frozen, or if you can train it to eat frozen, it's another thing of dedicating your time to training it to eat frozen. They're actually not that easy to. They're actually not that hard to look after once you get it eating frozen, but. Having said that, prior to getting it to eat, they are a tricky fish, especially if you get one that's already pretty thin. You are really on a sort of time frame before it is dead. So with that, if you can put the time into training the fish or target feeding it, it's another fish that it's very like it won't eat in certain surroundings. It won't eat if there's certain fish in the tank. If there's too much flow, it won't chase after food. So if you can put the time and effort, if you can turn the flow off and drop the food in and wait, and you can do all that good stuff, you'll have a really nice time with this fish. And for that, it goes into potential. But just keep in mind, it is hard to get eating. The next fish is arguably my favorite fish of all time, and that's not just in the reef hobby, but in the fish sort of as a species. It is the harlequin tuskfish, and it's not just my favorite because it's one of the variants I found locally, but I think it's safe to say this is one of the most striking fish in terms of color that you will ever see in the ocean. And it even has like fluorescent blue teeth, which is just pretty insane. I've kept this fish on one occasion. I got it about 4 years ago from a local reefer that was shutting his tank down. I think I paid about $50 for it, and it was an absolute steal. Beautiful specimen. It is a heavily debated fish, I think, because obviously most of your channels that have this fish will be people from the US, and they do cost quite a lot to get there. And obviously each fish having a different personality, you may get some that will eat your shrimp and stuff, as it is a wrasse, and it is from your larger wrasse family. So you do have to keep that in mind. But mine was a model citizen. It didn't touch my snails, it didn't touch my hermit crabs, and it definitely didn't go after any other small fish in the tank. So I do dream of having this fish again one day when the time is right, or if I do have a tank big enough. But it definitely has to go in the favorites list for me. Do you guys come across a specimen that's already tank hardened and already eating, I would 100% go for it if you've got the adequate tank space. The next fish on the list is a lemon peel, or I guess a lemon damsel. So I think they call it either the yellow damsel or the lemon peel damsel. I've kept this fish on one occasion before. Funnily enough, this was the first ever fish that I kept in the hobby, and it is an absolute monster. It is a very aggressive fish. I guess more territorial, I would say, in my experience, but for that matter, I would never keep it again. I think in terms of damsels, even if you look at other people's experiences, you will find that it is a pretty angry fish, and anything added after it will probably have a bit of a rough time settling in. So for that reason, I won't be keeping them again. Next up is the long-nosed butterfly fish, a often great alternative to the copperband butterfly, as it accepts foods a lot more easily. That wasn't the case when I kept it, unfortunately. Actually, you know what? I think I had it for a couple of months, but it did take a while for it to settle in and get eating. So it's one of those ones where, like, if you've got the time to feed it sort of what it needs with the requirements they have, then absolutely go for it. But personally, I would avoid most sort of butterfly fish, so I probably won't be going for it again. The next fish on the list is a maroon clownfish. It's a standard maroon. This at one time was probably one of my favorite fish in the hobby. Just seeing the sheer size of it and the color was pretty awesome. But then I finally kept one, and I realized why people say they're extremely aggressive, and they are. They're very territorial, and you have to be really careful when you net these guys, because they have this like inverted hook on each side of their mouth, and it gets caught in the net really easily. And if you try to wriggle them out, you may pull off their head. So just be careful with this fish. If you are keeping it, I would suggest keeping it as a pair in a smaller tank with an enemy. I think they do really well like that. But just be aware, like in this picture, they do start to lose their color quite severely when they get older, and they really turn a very dark maroon, and in a lot of cases almost a brown color. But they do get to a sheer size. I would avoid this fish. The next fish on the list is a Melanaris wrasse, another beautifully coloured wrasse, as most are. Some people have had good experiences with the wrasse in terms of eating, flatworms and your pest worms and stuff, and others have said they go after invertebrates. Mine didn't in my case, and was a great fish until I sold him. So I would place it in the potential. Again, it's one of those fish where it's up to the individual. You may get one that goes after your hermits and stuff. You may get one that doesn't, but nevertheless, it is a brilliantly coloured wrasse. Next fish on the list is a naso tang, or a lipstick tang. I've kept on one occasion, and it barely lasted a few days before it just died out of nowhere. And it was completely healthy in the fish shop. I don't know what it is with this fish. I've read many cases of people having it in their tanks die out of nowhere. They're seemingly healthy and eating, and they will literally just wake up one day and the fish will be dead without any scars or anything like that. So I would say avoid this fish, to be honest, and I would say avoid all sort of naso tangs. They do grow to quite a sheer size as well, and I know a lot of people might I guess still want to go for that fish, which is totally obviously up to you, but I think for such a fish of that size and the potential size that it gets to, I would say I think it would be better off just in the ocean. Next fish on the list is an Ocellaris clownfish, probably the most iconic reef fish of all time. It's the same fish, obviously, that Nemo is. I honestly can't say anything bad about this fish. It's one of the first fish I've kept. They are honestly almost bulletproof. They're really great beginner fish. I would highly recommend them to anyone that's getting into the hobby, or if anyone that was thinking about them. They really they really are a great fish, you know, and temperament wise as well, they're quite good. Even once they mature up and sort of take over the tank, they're still not too bad. And for that, they go into the favorites. Next fish on the list is a orchid dottyback. Weird thing with dottybacks is they're so incredibly vibrant and colorful. I don't know what it is, but with this dottyback, it is quite popular. I've had one on one occasion and it did well until Velvet wiped it out. I know some people have had semi-aggressive ones, but in my experience, they've been pretty good. And I think in a smaller tank they do, or they sort of look a bit better. I think you can sort of lose them in a large tank where you won't see them much, but in the right tank they can be quite striking. So and they do obviously, or not, I shouldn't say obviously, but in my experience it ate perfectly fine. It wasn't hard to get eating. The next fish is another type of clownfish. It is the peculiar clownfish. Very, very similar to the Ocellaris, but a lot of them have a little bit of a different banding sort of look. A bit of a weird one in my personal experience. I've kept, I believe, 2 pairs of peculiar clowns, and for whatever reason, versus the Ocellaris, I don't know if the Ocellaris that I've gotten before were tank raised and the peculiars were wild caught, but they just never seemed to do as well as the Ockies. And I don't know, I think their health sort of would dwindle after, you know, eight months to a year. So I'm a bit of sort of have a question mark over them. I know a lot of other people will have different experiences with them, but in mine, the Ocellaris just seemed to stay healthier for longer versus the peculiar. So I'll put them in potential because, look, it could just be the individual. Obviously, with that size clownfish, when they are wild collected, you really don't know how old they are, and they get to full size quite quickly, so it is a bit tricky to tell. The next fish on the list is a purple firefish. In my opinion, one of the not best colored, but I'm getting ahead of myself. One of the nicest colored fish, and I guess uniquely shaped fish you will see in the hobby. And the way it sort of flutters its fins is pretty interesting as well. I can't really say anything bad about this fish, except just be careful what other fish you keep with it, as they can be pretty skittish if you've got other boisterous fish in there. But I've seen them kept as a school, as a pair, and they actually look really great. I think, if you're a beginner looking at getting into the hobby, they're just really easy to get eating, which is the main thing, and you don't need a very large tank to keep them, so they're going in the easy. The next fish is another very popular one, a purple tang. I had a single specimen about 4 years ago, 4.5, or maybe about 3 years ago, that I paid a lot of money for. It's probably the most I've paid for a reef fish, and I got it in very small, and it grew quite large actually. It's still one of the fish that I shake my head in regards to the way it went out. Just for a bit of context, I was shutting down. I was getting a new tank, and I had about 15 fish in a small quarantine, and I was transferring them back and forth between two I guess holding tanks, and they must have got stressed, and long story short, they got ick, and it wiped out basically all my fish, except a banana wrasse that I had. But the purple tang was one of those victims, and it was a massive purple tang at that point. So I was really upset about that. But anyway, in regards to the fish, it is a obviously beautifully colored fish. It's got that striking yellow tail with the purple body. But in regards to how it acts, look, there's this theory, or maybe it's not a theory anymore, that tang's actually not the best fish to keep with LPS corals, as they nip on the polyps and stuff. And I actually found it pretty hard to feed my corals once that tank got sort of wind that I was target feeding the corals, and it would go after the mouth of the coral and the polyps and stuff. So it's one of those things where if corals are the main sort of thing in your tank rather than the fish, I'd honestly think twice about keeping a zebra soma tang, or a lot of tangs for that matter, because of that. But having said that, they're a really great fish, and in terms of keeping them and getting them eating, they're quite easy. So I would put them in the easy aisle, the easy category, and I would actually put the peculiar clownfish in the easy category as well, because for the most part they are easy to keep. I think in my, with my luck, I think the two that I got were already old and potentially on their way out. The next fish on the list is a Singapore, not a Singapore, sorry, it's a pyramid butterfly rather. Another alternative that people recommend instead of the copper band butterfly. These are quite plentiful in Australia, interestingly enough, and they do pop up occasionally at our local reef shops. The one I kept didn't last a week. I don't know why. Everything else was okay in the tank. I didn't have any aggressive fish. It was eating though, so it just sort of dropped dead out of nowhere, which isn't fun. And for that, I will be avoiding it in the future. Like most butterfly fish, I will be avoiding that one as well. But you guys, you might have a different experience with it. So if you want to take the punt, go for it. But obviously, you're dealing with an animal's life, so just keep that in mind. I've read similar stories to the experience I've had, where they're right in the fish shop, and then you take it home and it dies within a week. So I'm not sure. The next fish on the list is a red firefish. Just like obviously the purple firefish, exact same temperament, same eating habits. Again, really easy fish to keep. Great beginner fish. Would highly recommend it to anyone that's looking into to getting into the hobby. And it's got a pretty nice color as well. I can't really say anything bad about it, but again, just keep in mind what sort of tang mates it has, because they do have a tendency to hide if you've got any aggro fish in there. Next fish we have is one of my favorite fairy wrasse, and it is the redhead fairy wrasse. If you guys can get a hold of one of these, I would highly recommend them. Just be wary of your tank mates in regards to other wrasse that you're keeping in the tank. I introduced it, and then I introduced a couple of the wrasse after it, and it seemed like it went to the bottom of the pecking order quite quickly, just I guess due to their low aggression. But it is an absolutely striking fish, and I've seen these guys at full size, and they do get to a pretty decent size, and they still retain the color. So a very, very nice fish, and one that I would recommend. So the next fish is a carpenter's flasher wrasse, just like the earlier flash wrasse that I spoke about. Exact same temperament and eating habit. They're pretty easy to get eating, but they do have a tendency to sort of hide and go carpet surfing if they get stressed out, and they do seem to get stressed out quite easily compared to other wrasses. So just keep that in mind when if you're looking at getting one. Next up is the sailfin tang. This is the Pacific variant. There's a couple of different variants that you can get, but I've kept the Pacific variant on one occasion. A pretty resilient tang compared to other ones. I had a small baby Pacific tang a couple of years ago that was stuck to a wave maker. I actually have a video on it if you go through my channel, and made a full recovery. And I had it for quite a while before it unfortunately died due to ick. Which was my fault, but a pretty easy to keep tang in my opinion, and obviously once it gets that size, it's just a really nice showpiece. And if you've got the right size tank, I would highly recommend one if you're thinking of getting a tang. Next fish on the list is a Scott's fairy wrasse. This is a large variant of the fairy wrasse, and when I say large, I mean it's like 5 times the size. These guys get pretty big. I had one on one occasion, and unfortunately it did not survive QT. It was a pretty expensive loss. But look guys, in regards to the color, they're second to none for a wrasse. Brilliant color. But in regards to how easy they are to keep, I'm gonna say they're pretty difficult. I haven't read much about them online. I would just, I would have a big tank ready for it. Certain fish don't do well in QT, in my opinion, and I think wrasse are one of them, unless you've got a crazy QT setup with sand and stuff, but that sort of defeats the purpose. But look, if you guys are getting one, I would send it straight into the display. but obviously there's risks that come with that. Next up is a Scopus tang, which is, you know, closely related to the purple tang, similar shape, and as well as the sailfin. I guess a tang that sort of you know, gets looked past quite often due to the lack of color. But to be honest, if you can get one that's, you know, I guess eating and comes in fairly healthy from the wild, they can actually turn out to be quite a nice tang. And once they get a bit of size on them, they're really, I guess, you know, they can be a bit of a showpiece. The one that I kept in my experience, it didn't do well. It was locally caught. It was quarantined. It just didn't do well. It barely lasted a couple of weeks before it died out of nowhere. So I would recommend going the sailfin over the Scopus if possible, because in my experience, it just, the ones that come into the fish shop, they just don't look as healthy as the sailfins. Next fish on the list is a Tamini tang, one of the smaller tangs. Here in Australia, this tang is gaining a lot of popularity as it, you know, due to its availability and pretty nice color on those fins. It's a very bright orange. It's a tang that will just be, you know, eating algae all day and cleaning the glass and the rocks. So I would highly recommend it. I kept it on one occasion, and the thing lived for quite a while until Velvet killed it. You've probably heard that a couple of times. I had a lot of these fish in at one point in my last big reef tank, and Velvet honestly took out basically all of them. Yeah, the Tamini is a brilliant tang, and if you come across it, I would highly recommend looking at getting one, due to its, you know, its temperament is quite good, as well as, I guess, accepting food is not an issue with this tank. So it's going to go in the easy category for me. Next fish on the list is a snowflake eel. These guys they're an interesting one because, you know, I think as far as eels come, you get the snowflakes, and then you get all these other morays that grow to absolute giants. And the snowflakes, I think they stay relatively small in comparison to how big the morays get, but they still get quite large. Look, if you're keen on getting an eel, I would recommend a snowflake. And I've kept about 3 different eels, as you'll see in the list. The snowflakes accepted food almost instantly, guys. And you know what? The snowflake did also fly out of the tank almost straight away. So you need to keep a hood. I picked it up, put the sucker back in. It gave me a decent bite. He was fairly small though. Yeah, as far as eels goes, if you're looking at getting an eel, I would recommend a snowflake. I think temperament wise, they're okay with other fish that are large in size, but they will probably go for your snails and stuff. Next on the list is a Talbot's damsel, a really nice colored damsel. It's got a yellow face and a pink body. Temperament wise, this is probably one of the best temperament damsel, or, you know, best sort of one of the nicest damsels that you'll get in terms of not chasing other fish around the tank and taking up the whole tank for it as its territory. If you guys come across this damsel, I would highly recommend it if you were considering getting one. Like the Azure, I think they're pretty good and pretty easy to look after, and you don't have to worry too much about adding other fish after it. But obviously just keep in mind the tank size with that. Next fish is a tessellata eel, or leopard moray. I think in the States they call it tessellata. Here in Australia we call it the leopard moray. I have kept one of these on occasion. It was a big mistake. It was an impulse buy, really. You see it in the tank. They look awesome. I mean, they literally, you know, they look like a dragon. They got jagged teeth, and that's the reason why I would avoid them though. They you know, they're tank busters in the sense that if you don't have a proper tank setup and a decent lid, they will fly out. You know, and it when I say decent lid, it needs to be a good lid. Because they will fly out. Keep an eel long enough, it'll jump out the tank. These things grow into monster sizes. Look, I would avoid it. Next on the list is probably my most favorite tang that I've ever kept, and it's a 2-spot bristletooth tang. It's oftenly confused with the lavender tang or the blue eye bristletooth. They all sort of look the same. I'm just going to call it a bristletooth tang. These guys are extremely hardy, probably the hardiest tangs that you'll get. I'm not sure on availability in the States and Europe and stuff like that. Here in Australia, they're pretty easy to get, and they've become pretty popular due to the price tag of other tanks skyrocketing. In terms of keeping them, they're very easy to keep. They will eat anything, and they're absolute algae machines. They're better than a blue tang. You know, they're better than your zebrasomas. They will be eating algae non-stop. And even when you feed them meaty foods and stuff, they'll eat the meaty food, but they'll still go back to cleaning the tank, in my experience. They're going into the favorites. Next on the list is a Vlamini tang, probably the last tank that I kept in my 120 gallon cade. Grows into a monster. I knew it. I knew I wasn't going to keep it for too long. I had it for about 5 months, I want to say. And yeah, really nice fish though, to be honest. Packed on a lot of size. Ate absolutely everything that I put into the tank. No issues at all with eating. But obviously the massive caveat is that the thing grows into a monster. I think they can get to about 2 foot or so, or just under 2 foot. For that reason, it's going into the potential because, you know, with the right tank size, I probably would pick it up again. But yeah, they get very, very large. Next fish that I've kept is a ruby longfin fairy wrasse. And like the other fairy wrasse, I think I've kept these guys twice and they didn't last in QT. They both died, which is pretty unfortunate. But yeah, I couldn't even get them into my main display, which sucks. So I can't really say much about this fish, obviously, because I haven't really kept them for long, but I will be avoiding them in the future. I've got the clown goby next on the list, and this was the second fish that I had ever kept in my reef keeping journey. This was now probably just under 10 years ago. Really nice fish, really easy to use, guys, and not to use, sorry, really easy to keep, not using it to do anything. It'll just sit on coral all day. It'll sit on a rock ledge and it'll just stay around and look at you, and yeah, it'll just keep to itself. If you can keep other clown gobies with it, and I don't think there'll be any issues. And they come in different colors as well, so if you guys come across one and you're looking for a goby, I would highly recommend it. Next up is the yellowtail damselfish. Sort of like the azures, they're obviously the same sort of color, but I find they're a little bit more aggressive in that regard, and I would probably just be careful with them in smaller tanks. So they're going into the potential. Next on the list is a zebra moray eel. This is an eel that I had for, I want to say maybe about a month. The thing never ate. I don't know what it is with eels. Apparently they can go without eating for like a year and nothing will happen, or 6 months. I don't know how true that is. So just obviously do your research if you're looking into getting an eel. This is one of the eels where their teeth, they don't have serrated teeth like your tessellatas and stuff. They're flat sort of teeth, so they feed on crustaceans. Apparently the zebra is okay with fish, and it's a reef safe moray, which is why I picked it up. But the thing never ate, and it would literally bowl over corals in the nighttime when it was up and about. So I would be avoiding it for that reason. If you've got a species only tank, go for it. But in a reef tank, I would just say no. The final fish on the list, and I've got 2 pictures of it. I don't know what happened there, but it is the disappearing wrasse, or the scarlet pin wrasse. Out of all the wrasse that I've kept, this is probably the most aggressive wrasse that I have ever had. I did a bit of research when I bought it, and it did say that it was semi-aggressive, but look, I reckon it's a bit more than semi-aggressive. I had about 5 different wrasse in the tank, and as soon as I had the disappearing wrasse, the thing went absolutely ballistic at every other wrasse. And I guess it was trying to make its way up to the top of the hierarchy, and I believe it did kill one wrasse just from the sheer, I guess annoyance of just continually going at it and stressing it out. In my experience, it was just an absolutely aggressive monster. I don't know what happened to mine. I think it must have jumped out because like its name, it literally disappeared. It's one of those ones that I just don't know. I never found its body. And yeah, I have no idea what happened to it. It'll go into the never again list. And with that, that'll wrap up today's video. Now that I'm thinking about the wrasse, there is one fish that I did forget to add, and it is a 6-line wrasse. With the 6 lines, they're a hit and miss. Some people find they're fine, some people find them aggressive. I would put them in the potential. I'd probably not look to keep one again, in my personal opinion, but they are a nice coloured wrasse. So if you are adding it last, I think they would do all right. But that wraps up today's video, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the video. This is obviously a long one. This is all the reef fish I've kept during my current, up to 10-year reef journey. I started keeping a reef tank in about, as I said in the start of the video, around 2015 or late 2014. So it's been a roller coaster, and obviously you learn so much when you actually keep the fish versus reading online. But I hope you've learned a bit about them, and if you were thinking twice about a fish, I hope me sharing my experience with them can help you make a decision. But obviously with that, as I said, every fish has an individual personality, so just bear that in mind. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe. It lets me know that you guys are enjoying the content, and obviously like the video if you did enjoy it. But anyway, hope everyone's tanks is going well, and we'll see you in the next one. Happy reefing.